All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to That's Not Real Trick Watch Party Podcast. My name is Scotty, also known as EBC. Directly below me, the beautiful Short and Sweet, also known as Veronica, and dinnerless at the moment because there was some dinner bullshit, and yeah, wow. I don't know. This is why I provide my own food because at least I know it's always going to be there, as
True.
opposed to at the restaurant, and it's not going to be
I,
delivered.
I should have just done that.
That's what you get for trusting the system. Uh,
hmm
anyway, so we are in week 23 now, which means that for some reason you're still watching this and you're absolutely completely appalled and disgusted by how often we're on screen yakking about this Star Trek shit. Um, but in the meantime, if you're still here, God bless you, and we are moving on now to the post Picard era, or rather post TNG era is more accurate to say. We finished all of Discovery seasons 1 and 2 and Strange New Worlds and the shorts that were accompanying all of that, and then last time we did Star Trek Nemesis. As the foundation for everything that is to come now, which is post 2379. So we start tonight with 2380, which is, if I have it correct here, let's see, 2383. Yes, so this next segment happens between 2380 and 2399. So we're talking about a 19-year gap immediately following the events of Star Trek Nemesis. So there's some quite a few gaps to fill in before we actually get to Picard. In this 19-year period, Lower Decks, which is a uh, at times raunchy adult cartoon comedy, is still, for the most part, considered canon simply because the creators did make sure that it wasn't necessarily conflicting with anything that was presented in all the rest of the Trek series. So there really shouldn't be much that we're going to see, even though it's presented in this format, that's going to conflict with the rest of Trek canon history. And the same with Prodigy. Prodigy actually builds on a lot of other premises that have been explored in Star Trek history and then continues those things. For an example, if have seen any of the trailers for Prodigy, you've probably seen Admiral Janeway in there, and so they build upon that. This also being post Voyager, and now Janeway's an admiral in Starfleet, and her influence on that, and then you've got uh, what's her name, Kate. I can't remember her name.
Mulgrew?
Mulgrew, yes.
hmm
Kate Mulgrew voicing one of the characters in Prodigy. So these two series, Lower Decks and Prodigy, take place in that span and will create a lot of backstory for what else is to come in Picard and after this in when we get back to Discovery. Um, but the main purpose, at least for Lower Decks, is to take every single Star Trek Easter egg that has ever been known to any Star Trek fan and present it in a humorous light. And it's fantastic. The first time I watched, now I've only seen season one. We've got 3 seasons now of Lower Decks. Every episode I was watching just had me absolutely rolling because it is very well presented in that manner, where they take things that we are extremely familiar with in Trek, and they make fun of it, and they hit all the right notes for the jokes that any Star Trek fan could make about the things that we have known in Trek history. So, uh, we're gonna have fun with it. All right, so the first 2 episodes. By the way, have you looked at the episode list, the titles of the
No,
episodes?
No, I
Okay,
wanted to go in
don't
not knowing anything.
don't in the next hour here, and you'll see why when we come back after this. But the first two episodes, Second Contact, which they're talking about first contact, and then these are the guys that go for second contact, and episode two, Envoys. Here we go. Well, there you go. Yeah, what'd you think, man?
Pretty entertaining. And a lot different than what I expected.
Oh,
Um,
really?
yeah, I kind of expected more like, I don't know, like Family Guy style humor. Um, but yeah, it didn't seem like that.
Yeah, that's maybe my fault. That's what I compared it to. But yeah, the only reason I did that is because it's kind of like, yeah, I mean, most of the jokes are like adult type inside jokes. It's not geared towards kids
Yeah.
like Prodigy is. But yeah, it's not exactly the same type of humor at all. I don't know what else to compare it to though.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah. Um, so the characters, I think, yeah, Jerry O'Connell, who we actually don't get to see very often, but the main characters we've got Ensign Brad Boimler, who is, first of all, kudos on the name selection, Boimler. I just thought his name was hilarious. And then, he's the real straight laced, kind of anxiety ridden guy, very by the book. Then you've got Beckett Mariner, who is the wild child and always involved with everything and um, troublemaker. And we found out in the first episode that she is also the daughter of the captain, who that's Captain Freeman. And then we've got Devana Tendi, who is the Orion girl, and she's in medical and just kind of like excited by everything. Always, it doesn't matter what it is, she wants to be involved. And then Ensign Sam Rutherford in engineering, and he is. Also kind of anxiety ridden, but he's the tech guy and finds everything, extremely interesting that is related to the most boring technical thing. Jerry O'Connell plays Commander Jack Ransom. So he's the guy in the first part that first one that brought the infection back on the ship, and
Okay.
he's the second in command, and he's got that whole like Riker to the nth degree type courage and ego and all that.
Is he in the second episode at all?
Yeah, yeah, but he's
Okay.
the whole point is lower decks. They're focusing on the first four characters there, so you're only going to see the captain and commander a couple of times, and then what's his name? I can't remember his name, but the guy that is the head of security.
Oh, okay.
He's the other kind of like secondary character. You'll see him appear a lot, but it's much less on screen. So what do you think of the storyline and all that?
I mean, it's pretty like I like that it's easy to follow. You don't really have to pay like super close attention to
Right.
any like crazy details or anything like that. It's just nice that we're going along and I don't know, it's very casual.
Yeah, yeah. And the characters. Have you latched on to any characters in particular?
Not just yet. I do like them all. There's no one that I dislike, the one thing that kind of bugs me is, what's the girl's name? Mariner.
Yeah.
She talks so fast and she's like neurotic. So that is kind of like disarming, but I think I'll get used to it. But yeah, that was like
Oh,
something I kind of started noticing a lot, was just like
yeah, Mariner in particular, but they're all kind of like real high energy and just constantly. There's no space, no time between their lines, so it's constantly
yeah.
da da, and oftentimes they're talking over each other too.
Hmm.
Um, so it seems like they really kind of built that in as far as we want to keep this moving literally as fast as possible.
Yeah.
Um, so not too bad. Um, so a couple of my takes on it. The first is that the way they designed this, it's definitely got the adult and some of the sexual innuendo. It's got some inside references, not only that you would only get if you were a Star Trek fan, but also things that we have maybe often thought of, like using the holodeck for untowards purposes. Yeah, Berkeley indeed would be very happy with that. Um, yeah, exploring those kinds of risque things that regular Trek just wouldn't be able to do.
Right.
Um, in my opinion, that I mean, obviously, this is something that's not really been done before in Star Trek, and they um, they were trying to fill that niche where they're looking at this material that wouldn't fly anywhere else and they're saying, well, let's give it a home here. All of the things that are completely outrageous, or the things that you would never expect to happen in regular Trek because it's just not something that would happen in a reality scenario. We're definitely going to put that in here, and we're going to explore it to the nth degree, and that we're also going to make fun of everybody along the way.
Yeah.
Um, so I find that really cool the way they did that.
Mhm.
Um, yeah. So any other thoughts on the first two
Oh, I
episodes?
I just really liked how their like red alert is going on, this huge major crisis, and they're just like, "Oh, we're on this date. Like, we're
Yeah.
just gonna ignore all this in the background." That was pretty hilarious to me.
Yeah. Um, well, of course, we always have time to talk about our feelings, right? But
Right, right.
the general idea being that even when the ship's under attack and everything's exploding and all that, in this case we've got a zombie virus that's taking over most of the crew, and we're fighting for our lives. Hey, we're in the middle of a date.
Yeah,
Let's
yeah.
let's still have fun while we're doing this. And then the most asinine reason why those two aren't going to be a thing in the future, because she didn't share his passion for why during Red Alert it sealed the compartment door or something. But yeah, pretty fun.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts on those before we move on?
What do you think of ship? What do you think of the ship?
Um, my understanding is that it's supposed to be a science vessel,
Okay.
like so it wasn't necessarily going to be like this type of epic ship that you might see in one of the other series. um it's an interesting design. It reminds me a lot of the Reliant from Star Trek 2. That kind of that squat, yeah, looks like it could sit very sturdily on the ground and you know
Yeah.
not be too much trouble. And the Ceratos, it's called. obviously comes with the modern technological advances that TNG had, and they built upon some of that. Like you saw just how closely they recreated the look of the interior of the holodeck, um,
Hmm.
and some of the other things. You know, the bridge actually wasn't that far off from maybe what the Enterprise looked like, or the um, the fact that it's a science vessel and probably a much smaller vessel than like the Enterprise, and so it's the same kind of basic design for the bridge, but scrunched down a little more
Hmm.
compact. You know, you've got the barrier between the three seats and the back part of the bridge. And instead of that being like the curved railing or something else, you just got this straight kind of block.
Yeah.
Um, so I could definitely see that they were going for that type of design as opposed to, you know, something that maybe came earlier with the Enterprise or the Enterprise A with that more circular modular design of the bridge. You know, they definitely kind of did their homework in creating something that appears well placed in the timeline.
Yeah.
So I like that aspect of it. And to me it looks like a sturdy ship that could probably withstand a lot, even though it's just a science vessel. Um, and maybe that would come into play at a later time where, you know, I don't know if you caught some of this. I just was reminded. Did you get the personality of the captain at all? Like we had the little spout there where she was arguing back and forth with her husband or ex-husband, the admiral,
Yeah.
over their daughter. But there was also like in from what I could see, little hints that the captain isn't quite as qualified to command that ship as you might think. Like,
Interesting.
you know, everybody is crazy to one degree or another, but and that includes the captain, but she um it seems like she's kind of prone to like little bouts of going off into a tangent and not quite coming back as quickly as you would hope, you know. Um,
Right.
and of course, you know, the commander, what's his face, that Jerry O'Connell plays, Commander Ransom. He's much worse. He's
Yeah.
like probably the most egotistical guy on the ship.
Right.
Um, but yeah, as far as the ship goes, I found it a really interesting design that they would come up with, especially for the format, the animation. So,
Yeah.
what did you think?
I mean, I thought they very deliberately made it look quite similar to the Enterprise. Like the whole time I'm
Mhm.
like, "Oh, yeah, that 10 forward looks
Right,
pretty much the same. The shuttle bay similar, um,
corridors.
corridors, and then even the look of the ship from the outside, it kind of looks like they just took the Enterprise and like split that like middle part down and then
Yeah,
scrunched it a little bit, and
which
so
I mean,
it looked very deliberately.
some of the books that I've read on the art and design work that was done on Star Trek over the years, you know, um, like Jeffries tubes. Uh, Jeffries tubes that are an integral part of almost every single ship on Star Trek, at least Federation wise, were named after Matt Jeffries, who was the art designer on the original show. And he was the guy that came up with all the concept drawings for everything that they then put together for the actual show, including like some of the scenes that you would see that are actually still frames, but they're presented in a way like it's you know, a vista view of a city or something like that. That was all his concept art that was then used for whatever purpose, and he would actually sit there and draw like little blueprints and things to come up with the artwork for how corridors were designed, or what a shuttle looks like, or eventually the outside of the ship. Um, so it's been really interesting over the years looking at the concept art for Star Trek and some of the books that I've purchased that highlight that, to then come to something like this where everything is concept art because they're literally building it into an animated show.
Right.
And that's hand animated. None of this is CGI, or I don't think any of it is CGI. There might be a few parts here and there, but um, yeah. So uh, the concept art, as it has been over the years, of course, Matt Jeffries is not involved in this anymore, but it was his original concept art that kind of launched those things. How the corridors and the shuttles and the ships are supposed to be designed. It was Matt Jeffries who not only came up with the concept art, but actually worked on the original models of the Enterprise in that. So that design, and I do also remember reading some story of how the Enterprise, Gene Roddenberry would basically have these powwows with Matt Jeffries, who would send him the concept art, and he'd go, no, no, it shouldn't be like that. You need to move this over here, and this needs to be sleeker or whatever, and they go through 60 revisions before finally getting to the model that appeared on the show. Um, and very much so, the saucer and two nacelles design is mostly Gene Roddenberry, and then Matt Jeffries translating that into a visual thing. Um, so we have him to thank for that, because they went through so many different iterations with uh, ship design, and there was other things like I've seen some of that early concept art that never was used. And they went with a whole bunch of different, one nacelle, three nacelles, five nacelles. They would, instead of having a saucer section, they would have either, like a blunt flat end with a tapering nose, or one of those concept designs that was never used actually was used later, in the final episode of TNG All Good Things, with Dr. Crusher's medical ship, which instead of a saucer had a sphere for the
Yeah.
forward section. You know, those types of things. And that was almost all Gene Roddenberry's influence to say, this is what I think the ships of Star Trek need to look like. And that was very basic at the beginning with the Constitution class and a few other things that they came up with, but it evolved from there then into all the myriad different ships that we have seen now. Um, and they've been more fully exploring what is possible with these designs. And then of course that branched into a whole new thing with uh, ship models, and you can buy the Eagle collection and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
I did want to get into that. I just didn't have the money for it. Um, but now they're even doing ships that have been designed entirely for Star Trek Online,
Oh.
or what's the new mobile game? Um, Something where your entire thing is just, flying ships around and
Oh.
building your crew. I can't remember the name of it.
Hmm.
Um,
Interesting.
but yeah, uh, the Eagle Moss collection has
Yeah.
been growing by leaps and bounds as they include all of these different designs. It's really cool.
Nice.
But yeah, interesting way that they put it into development. All right, so anything else that I missed on these first two episodes before we move
No,
on?
I think so.
Okay, so now I get to make you cringe, because the third episode is called Temporal Edict, and the fourth episode is called Moist Vessel.
Nice. Awful.
Yeah. All right, here we go. Well, there you go. Little bit of moist vessel for you there.
No.
Um, so what'd you think? Any thoughts on those last two episodes?
Still pretty good. I like all the Easter eggs they kind of throw in there here and
Mm-hmm.
there. Um, but yeah, it's a lighthearted. It's the storyline is it's distinct, and it's here's this episode, and you can watch them out of order, and it doesn't matter.
Right.
Um, I do like that about it. Uh, yeah, good stuff.
So I wanted to relay a story that popped into my head when I was I wanted to relay a story that popped into my head when we were going through that last episode. You know, we've seen a couple of times in Star Trek a problem that is occurring and then a solution that the crew comes up with that seems a little far fetched. I mean,
Hmm.
the problem itself probably seems a little far fetched. Like, you remember that episode of TNG where Data kind of turns into like a god and the one room is turned into the temple thing? And yeah, that seemed like a pretty far fetched problem. But then the crew comes up with a far fetched solution to this problem, and you're like, oh, okay, that doesn't sound plausible, but it works, and we just roll with it because, how else are we going to end the story?
Yeah.
Um, and do you remember the TNG episode? I don't remember the name of it, where Deanna Troy starts rapidly aging, and
Yeah.
by the end of the episode, she's like this old woman lying on the bio bed, and Crusher's like, I don't know how to handle this or whatever, and then something else happens that removes whatever was influencing her, and within the period of like, I don't know, 10 seconds, she rapidly de-ages back to exactly where she was.
Right.
So I remember watching that episode for the first time with my grandmother when it first came out and was airing on television back in, I don't know, that was probably like early 90, 91, whatever. And I will never forget my grandmother's reaction to that scene. And I didn't quite understand it at the time. I was still kind of like new to the concept of Star Trek and all that, but it was a show that I liked and I knew I liked it. And I remember my grandmother, who was born in 1932, seeing that scene, and as soon as she sees Deanna Troy rapidly de-age, she goes, "Oh geez, really?" Um so, to me, it's almost like, and I don't know if this is particular to Star Trek, but it seems like in creating these storylines, which aren't always the best, they sometimes have to come up with these novel ideas to create a resolution to the scenario, and that isn't the best either. And I saw a little bit of that being mocked here with, we're talking about a Genesis liquid that causes inorganic material to become organic, so the ship starts turning into a jungle and all this. And what's the solution to that? Oh, we're gonna do whatever they said by, you know, spraying this gas and then running it through the deflector dish, and yeah, that's the standard far-fetched solution. And what that causes is the immediate recession of all of this, and the ship just turns back to normal, except we've got some orange goo here and there.
Yeah, everything's fine.
Yeah. Um, and perfectly timed at the end of the episode to revert the ship and the crew back to normal so that they're ready for the next episode. Uh, that sort of thing. I believe they were really trying to make fun of sometimes what is come up with in these story scenarios just to be able to do this episodic nature. So what did you see in all of that?
Yeah, I definitely picked up on the, it's kind of tongue in cheek, and it's nice because with these more lighthearted, shows, you can kind of even suspend your disbelief even further. So, they do have
Right.
more creativity and freedom to go with storylines this and kind of like this and kind of make fun of how they're gonna end these episodes and get out of these situations. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, overall, I do like it. I do like the style.
And then we saw some character development now in this last one. This relationship between the captain and her daughter. That she's always gonna be a wild child. She's always gonna be the one that breaks the rules, but still gets stuff done, and is a thorn in everybody's side because of that. But they admire the fact that she is experienced and she often knows what she's doing and she gets things done. Um, and I was reminded of did you ever see the Orville with
Yeah.
Seth
Mhm.
MacFarlane? The beginning of the Orville where he's now being forced to serve on this ship with his ex-wife. And are they going to be able to make that work out? Are they going to be able to have this working relationship with what is it transpired between them? And I saw that kind of character development here, where even though 90% of it is fun and games and mocking these things in Star Trek that we love, um, they're actually developing some of the character here and advancing this overarching storyline about who these people are and maybe explaining away some of their idiosyncrasies in that. Um, so did that advance any of your understanding of the characters, or like any of your like or dislike for any of them?
Oh, well, it kind of made me like I can't Mariner.
Yeah,
Her name keeps escaping me. It made me like her more because she doesn't want to be put into this position. She doesn't want all these responsibilities, but she's still like she's begrudgingly doing it. She's oh, okay. But
yeah,
she's still doing it. She's not giving up. So it does make her personally to me more likable because she's just that tenacious. And um the other guy's like, I do everything right
yeah.
and you get promoted. It's just so funny.
Um, yeah, she's. I don't think there's any way that Mariner could give up. Like it's just not in her nature. So when faced with even the most boring of challenges, she's like, "Oh, fine, I'll do it." You know, and that surprised her mom.
Mhm.
And the captain now has a little bit more of a newfound respect for her daughter that wasn't there before. You
Yeah.
know, and then likewise, what's her face? The I can't remember names either. The Orion girl. Um, this entire episode, last one was about Tendi. Um, it was about her dealing with this not only idiosyncrasy but almost like a character flaw in her nature, that she has to have people like her. She can't stand it when people don't like her,
Mhm.
and that she has to kind of work around that because she hasn't come to grips with how she can tamp that down a little bit. Um, and I thought that was they kind of uh, built that into this comedy parody scheme with the Traveler and this guy ascending, uh, and it turns out to be the most painful thing for him to experience. Uh, and we have to talk about the fact that apparently the universe is run by a smiling koala bear. You know, I had no clue. You know,
Right. Who would have thought?
yeah, who'd have thought? Apparently the Traveler knew.
Yeah.
Um, and now Wesley Crusher does too now.
And probably the Q too.
Yeah, yeah, it might be a Q.
Oh,
Q
could
Q
be.
koala. No,
Q Walla.
there you go. Um, yeah, so that kind of character development is nice. You know, that they're not only for fun and games, they're also saying, yeah, we can actually build in some real storylines here and show the strength of a variety of different ways to present this story. So I'm really enjoying that. Anything else that you can think of?
Not offhand. Yeah, just that I love that they did reference the great bird.
Yeah,
But, that was a nice touch
yeah.
there. Like, just
There are so many references and Easter eggs in this that it's kind of hard to keep up with it. It's almost like, especially as we were noting earlier, the speed at which they talk and the speed at which that is presented with no gaps between the dialogue. You almost have to like watch a section and then pause it and reflect on what you were watching, or go back and see it again and do that maybe in like 30-second segments if you really wanted to get everything out of it because they pack so much into it and it's so fast paced.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, the references are out the wazoo, and it's like, um, we had the holodeck references. At one point, he's talking about being Moriarty because he doesn't
Mm-hmm.
want to follow the rules anymore, so he's going to cause chaos and destruction by being Moriarty. Um, yeah, just great stuff like that. Um, and I feel like that was probably like their biggest purpose in putting this together, was to say how many references can we jam pack into each episode, and these are going to be the references that every Star Trek fan knows because they've watched it all their lives, and therefore they're going to get that reference, and then they're going to get the one after that, and every single one of them lining up is going to be uh, a bigger and bigger deal.
Yeah.
um, so I just think it's kind of interesting that. All right. Well, yeah. So fast paced. Like I said, we're gonna fly through these. That's 4 episodes. Next week, we're gonna look at episodes 5 through 8. Um, and there's only 10 episodes per season on this. Um, so yeah, I think only in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 weeks. We'll be done with lower decks and already into Prodigy. So moving right along. Um, and I'm sure that at some point you decided to give in to the moistness of the vessel in the last.
Never.
No, never. Uh,
Never.
maybe one of these days. You never
We'll
know.
see.
All right. Okay. So if there's nothing else you can think of, because I myself struggle with the speed of some of this and keeping up with what's being said, and
Hmm.
so if we ever come, back to this at any point, do you think of something else? Let me know, because I'm sure I'm missing certain points that should have been brought to light. Yeah, but we'll see what it is. All right.
All right.
Well, thank you then. We'll see you next week
Thank you.
and continue on with this. Adios.
Toodaloo.